Welcome to episode 18 of Motorbike Mondays. This is Evan from Race Tech Electric.
This is Brady from Seaweed and Gravel.
And this is Jared from Seaweed and Gravel.
San
San Diego, California.
San Diego. We're back from Saturday school at Deus Ex Machina in Venice in
Venice.
LA.
Yeah.
Well, we've been back for a few days now.
Well, yeah, but they don't know that.
Well, I don't know if they knew that we actually went.
Yeah, we said it last week.
Did we?
So they know.
Oh, okay.
So like everybody thinks we're still gone. We just got back from that.
It was a one-day
that
trip.
long drive.
It was a one-day
LA.
trip. Some of the worst driving I've ever seen.
I got bad mileage, but I drove.
I do very good in the car. I have never felt car sick before until I was in the car with you for over 2 hours.
I've
In
already
Evan's defense, though, he
explained-
had some kind of
I've already
bullshit
explained
programming
why.
chip.
His tuner kit.
His tuner kit.
It was because I tuned the
He beefed
Titan
it up.
for maximum horsepower, and sometimes
no,
you have to.
not maximum horsepower.
You got to give things
Maximum
up
car
if
sickness.
you're gonna run hard at the limit like I do. You're gonna have to give up comfort.
Evan likes
and
to drive with his big toe.
So
He's a big toe driver.
it's a powerful truck, man. Titan's got a lot of balls. So you either deal with that or you don't. Anyway.
Well, or you learn to drive it, make everyone else comfortable around you.
Well, I
you got
think I
nothing.
drove just fine. But anyways, you guys.
Well, yeah,
kissed
the
my
driver
ass.
always is fine.
Yeah, I had a great time.
And you know what? I don't really get car sick either, but when I do, it's when I'm not driving.
Well, like you just said, when you're driving, you don't
Yeah,
get
yeah.
car sick.
I guess so.
Okay, literally nobody gives a shit about the drive there or
I do,
back.
so that's all that matters.
So, anyways, it was Saturday school was awesome. It was
Yeah,
a
it
lot
was
of fun.
A lot of fun.
It was a good event. There was a lot of people there. Everybody was awesome. The guys from Deus were really cool. Thanks to
Nevin and Hiroshi.
and Hiroshi
Thanks, guys.
for inviting us and setting that all up.
And thank you to all that listening who showed up. It was nice to
Yeah, we met
meet
a lot of
few
people that have
so-
actually
That's
listened
true.
to our show, and it was cool. And new people that found us from the Saturday school.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming out and talking to us, and we had a blast. And hope we could answer some of your questions. So yeah, it was a good time.
I'm going to put up some pictures and video from it. I haven't gotten around to that yet, but I'll put it up this week. So anyways, yeah, it was awesome. Hopefully we'll do another one again, but it was a cool event, and they had some really cool like vendors there. The suspension guys were pretty cool.
Did either one of
Lindemann.
you sit on one of his little
No.
lessons?
Huh?
I wanted to, but I didn't.
No, I did. I listened to about 10 minutes of the last one he did. It was
I
pretty
wanted
interesting.
to both times that he was doing his little deal.
Yeah, it sounded
but I
pretty
was-
cool. That guy
I think
knew
I
his
was
stuff.
Fixing some guy's bike and then chatting about a
Yeah.
bike or something with
It was
another guy
it was
at that
cool.
time.
Like there was no downtime. We were busy talking to people the entire day, which was
Yeah,
awesome.
all three of us helped out with at least 3 different people's motorcycles.
Yeah, it was good. So, anyways, it was really cool. Good event, and thanks for having us. Check out the pictures and the video I'll put up. So let's talk about
What's in the shop?
Oh
Thanks,
my
dude.
god!
He handled that for me because I'm sick, so I wouldn't have been able to hit
It's
those
the only
notes.
time.
Wow,
It's the only
Fist
time.
bump.
I know he's sick.
Aaron,
and,
dude.
I am so glad that we recorded that.
My love for Jared overpowered my hatred for that.
It's
That's-
like Christmas and my birthday in one. I never thought I'd see the day.
Hey, well, let's let Brady go first now.
Yeah,
'cause,
it's all you, man. You earned it.
All right, this is gonna throw me off.
No, it's all- go for it.
I like my routine. So
You just threw routine to the wind, man. You don't
Yeah.
even care
Yeah, but
anymore.
That was like me trying to open up the show last episode,
Yeah.
and then we had to cut it out.
no, I mean because it was my
Yeah.
routine. I planned for this.
Well, I
And
planned
so
for it.
Well-
I didn't plan for starting out what's in the shop first.
You know what? It's a brave new world. So go for
Is
it.
that from like
All
Pocahontas?
right.
or-
Well, what's
Pocahontas.
in my shop?
I think it's a song from like Little Mermaid or something.
So what's in my shop? I have the XS 750 still blown apart, and I have some paint on order to finish up the job on that. And in the meantime, I've been finalizing some mock-ups for the next project coming in, which I'll probably by next episode I'll probably have the next project, which is another 550 CB 550 in the shop, and probably working on teardown on that and parts ordering, and yeah, that's about it, I'd say, in my shop.
Well, for me, Zach Waller's bike has finally...
Hey, watch with the full names, man. I don't think we have his permission.
He listens to the show.
Is that who bought the
Yeah,
that
yeah.
550?
He commissioned it.
Yeah, so that bike shipped out today, which I'm very happy. Zach, I hope you're happy.
Are you going to give out his like address and social security number?
No,
too,
I don't
just
even
to
know
be
where he
safe?
lives. I mean, I know whereabout, but
You kept saying Springfield or something.
no.
Didn't he say it's going to the Midwest or something?
It's going to
It's
Colorado.
going to Colorado.
Oh, Colorado.
This might be getting
Got it.
too specific. We might need to cut out his last name.
And don't his kids go to school? And
But yeah, so hopefully the bike makes it to its destination.
Well, yeah, there shouldn't be
time.
any issues, I'm sure.
Oh, well, I guess where he lives, like, the shipping company goes to a very major city in the state that he lives.
Yeah, once a
And
week.
then, no, it goes there, all the time. But from that major city, they only go out to where he lives, which is, I guess, like
oh, got it.
an hour and a half
okay.
outside of the city once a week.
Yeah.
So if the bike, say that date is Wednesday and the bike doesn't get there till Thursday, he has to wait a whole another week to get the
Right.
bike. Unless he drives an hour and a half to go pick it up.
What's did you use like a motorcycle specific shipping company or
Yeah, I believe it was AA Motorcycle Transportation.
That's good, because I have shipped mini bikes where they're just a transporting company, and they don't ship out bikes often.
Yeah.
And they don't give a shit.
No.
And so I've had on
You're just
multiple
loading
occasions
them with forklifts and shit.
No, I mean, not that severe, but I've had multiple occasions where I get a call back from the client. They get their bike, but the shocks are blown out, the
Yeah.
forks are blown out
Yeah.
because they just strap the bikes down as tight as they can, and
I
you
gotta
ruin
find
suspension that
a
way.
picture. I was just thinking this was insane. I think it was just before I met you guys that this happened because I didn't have that GPZ 750 in here ever, right? When I met you guys,
No.
It was silver. Okay, so I had this really nice 80 something GPZ 750, like killer shape, and
That was Tom Cruise.
Tom
yeah,
Cruise.
same bike.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Top
it
Gun.
was silver, but it was same bike, and it was in killer shape. And I sold it. I fixed a starter clutch and some other stuff. I sold it on eBay, and a dude in Japan bought it, Mr. Shiroki or something, and he
Very racist.
no, that was his name. It was something like that.
Well, now you're just giving out customer information.
Anyways, so he bought it on eBay, and he paid good price for it. Like, I mean, he paid a lot for it. It was a fair price, but it was a super nice bike. And
Well, I'm sure shipping cost just as much as the bike was
he
worth.
arranged, because I said he lived in Japan. He wanted it shipped to Japan, and I said, I'll ship it anywhere you want. I'll help. I'll make sure, I'll help like load it up or whatever, but you have to arrange shipping. I'm not going to do it. So the dude he's like, I buy bikes in the U.S. all the time. I'm going to use my shipping company I always use. Okay, no problem. Truck shows up to get it, and it was a semi rig with a car carrier. So
Yeah.
it was not a flatbed. It was a car carrier that is basically like two rails, like ramps that the car drives on. And the guy had a wrecked Harley, a full size, like a Road King or something, laying on its side, tied down with not even ratchet straps, with cam lock, like pull straps,
No way.
tied down to one of the rails. And then he had a couple wrecked cars. It was the biggest like shit heap I've ever seen. And the guy says, "Oh, cool, let's load this up." And I'm looking at him like, are you insane? Like, you're going to put this bike on this thing? And he was like, yeah, man, I do this all the time. Like, I'll handle it. And so I'm kind of like, okay, like, because the dude arranged the shipping himself and said these are his guys that he uses. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So, and I helped the guy put it on the truck because I was like really paranoid about him dropping it. And we get it up there. He doesn't even tie it down to like the front tire's not even against anything rigid. He
Yeah.
puts a blown truck tire on the like ramp thing and pushes it up against there, and then does this crazy, he actually used like ratchet straps, but did this crazy like tie down thing where he like looped the ratchets through the front and rear rims, so you're kind of pulling opposite ways
Yeah.
on it, which I swear I saw the steering neck bend. because he was wailing on it, and it was pulling the forks like apart. And then he tied it down from the top down and looped it around the bottom of the frame, pulling on the plastics. And like, it was the most half-assed, unsafe, like tie down job I've ever seen. And I took 100 pictures, and I went and emailed the dude all these pictures and was like, man, I just so you know, like, I am not responsible for this thing. The second it rolled out my door, like, this was your guy, and he said that he does this for you all the time, so it is what it is, but do not come back to me and complain about anything broken on this. And he never even answered my email, and I never heard anything else. So as far as I know, the bike made it to Japan, but I swear I thought that thing was going to be destroyed by the time it made it a block from here.
Well, I guess
it was crazy.
I guess with like AAA or AA motorcycle towing, they have like flatbeds kind of, or it's like too high, I guess. And then they have just a bunch of wheel chokes
right
in there,
and it's enclosed, right? I'd assume.
I don't think so. I don't know really. Dave was trying to tell me about it earlier, but but they don't pick up the bike initially. So like just a regular shipping company picks it up.
Right.
At Seaweed, and then takes it down to their warehouse in San Diego, and that's where AA Motorcycle gets it from.
Got it.
But they have to load every bike on strategically,
so they get them out.
Drop off
get them out.
Yeah.
Right. Well, if they're a motorcycle specific company, I'm sure they're fine.
I mean, that's pretty much like the ones that I trust are like specific motorcycle shipping or transporting companies,
right?
Or if it's crated.
Yeah,
because that way I crate it, I strap it down.
Have you done that before? Shipped them
no.
crated?
But I had supplies ready to like build a crate and everything, and clothes around it. But the guy ended up changing shipping companies.
It's crazy because you could put in, especially a bike like you guys do, where you've got months of work into something.
Yeah,
that's
especially
that
overseas.
valuable. You know,
especially overseas, like I wouldn't feel anything but comfortable if
you'd have
crated.
to. It's I don't know. It's kind of scary when you think about it. Like you could have that much money into something, and a shipping company could half-ass it.
Yeah,
you know.
And shipping companies, they are reliable for it, but they just say, "Oh no, it wasn't us." And, and it's pretty much they're the Judge Dredd of the situation. And so,
judge, jury, and executioner. Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. You definitely don't want a half-assed company shipping your bike. So,
well, let's get back on to
Evan.
Whoa! What about my shop?
Exactly.
What were you saying?
Oh, I thought you were trying to jump to our topic and cut me out.
So today we're talking about. No, just kidding.
Well, I really don't have anything interesting. The only thing in the shop right now is the RS 100, which is getting fairly close to being done. Hopefully it'll be done this week. And I'm just finishing up cleaning stuff and putting it back together. And I've got I've got like 4 custom stator winds lined up right now. So that's mainly what's going to be keeping me busy is a whole bunch of stator jobs that I got to come up with some new designs for, so that'll be fun. And that's really about it. Nothing else going on here. So, anyways, let's talk about our topic tonight. We're going to be talking about how motors work, both 2-stroke and 4-stroke motors. Brady, as usual, put together comprehensive notes, which is awesome.
Thank you.
Because now we're super prepared, which is which is good.
Super comprehensive.
Yeah, it is really comprehensive. I like it. Turns out that to put together a good podcast, you really need to prepare.
Yeah.
And we're learning that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're learning the importance of that. And we're also broadcasting from our super sweet new podcast studio.
Well, there's a desk that got moved over, but it is pretty.
It's still cool.
Yeah,
it's still cool.
I got a new chair. It's freaking comfortable.
Yeah, I'm looking at 5 different monitors right now. Well, 4, and it looks really professional.
And if you look at your phone screen, then that's a 5th one.
Yeah, you could count the phones too.
I guess I checked the message not too long ago.
It's getting even better. We're going to continue to improve it. So.
Yeah. So, I guess carrying on, like Evan said, we are going to be talking about how motorcycle motors work. Actually, just more combustion motors in general. A lot of this, I mean, even actually, for the most part, this complies with car engines as well. Lawnmower engines, Doesn't cover diesel engines. Those are we don't really.
That's kind of out of the scope of what we're dealing with.
But I mean, that would be aside from like diesels and like rotary motors or not wanker motors,
Wankle,
Wankle motors, which are rotary motors. Those operate a little differently. Which Kawasaki made a rotary motor.
So did Suzuki. So did Triumph.
Exactly.
There's almost every major brand has experimented with rotaries at some point.
So I'd actually recommend looking those up.
One day I spent about 3 hours. I just got on Wikipedia and then linked to all sorts of other crap, and I read about rotaries for hours.
Yeah, that's one of those things.
It's
like
really
how a Positrack rear end works.
It just does.
It just does. That's before
Why
I
is the
did
sky blue?
multiple trips of researching how a rotary motor works. I think I finally understand the premise and kind of how it operates, but very, very interesting motors.
Well, have you ever seen the Kawasaki and Suzuki, I think, both made the rotary valve induction two-strokes? Have you ever seen those?
No.
I had one, and it was probably one of the first bikes that I ever bought, and it was when I knew next to nothing about anything. And it was a 67 Kawasaki. It's called a P105C Bearcat. And it had a dual range transmission and twin gears on the rear, or twin sprockets on the rear tire. So you actually had two ranges with a high and a low range, and then a 5-speed transmission on a 125cc two-stroke single. And then you could take the chain off and put it onto a different sprocket on the rear. It was really weird. But anyways, it had a rotary valve induction motor, which the carburetor... So this thing was driving me crazy because I thought it was missing parts when I bought it. I got it for $200 because the guy didn't know what it was. And under the right side cover, on the Yamaha where the oil pump was, that's where the carburetor was mounted. And it has a disc that is mounted to the crankshaft that has a valve on it. And the carburetor mounts on the side and is butted up against this disc, and every time the disc comes by is when it allows the mixture to be pulled through.
That's crazy.
And then other than that, it's basically a standard two-stroke, but it was called rotary valve induction, and I don't even really understand what the whole point of doing that was. I think it had something to do with eliminating the reed valve thing that these bikes
exactly.
use. But I'm no expert on it. But anyways,
the power valve.
It was really, really interesting.
All right. Well, moving on now back to our topic. So, like I said, we are going to be talking about just covering the two different motorcycle motors, or at least two of the types of motorcycle motors that we're going to be.
Well, these will cover the most common bikes that you would run into.
So we're going to be going through 4-stroke motors and 2-stroke motors, and we're going to be going through. Start with 4 strokes. That will definitely be your most common, and then kind of when we get to 2 strokes, let you know the differences and how they operate as well. So,
and we'll put up on the page for this show some videos or some animations or something showing these in motion. So once it
makes so much more sense.
Yeah, if you look at a picture,
watch it happen.
It'll very clearly explain this.
Now, the first thing we're going to talk about real briefly is the 3 things that every engine needs. The first one being is mixture. So mixture pretty much just means your air and fuel mixture. You absolutely need for a motor to run.
What was that magic number? 14.7 to 1?
14.2 to 1 ratio.
Air to fuel.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's your optimized.
Or lean.
Yeah, that's your optimized. But you can also in tuning, say dyno tuning for a race bike, you'd probably run that at say 12.4 to 1.
I remember we were arguing about that before. Where did that number come from?
Brady's head.
Just through a lot of
made
math.
It up.
Is this something you looked up on Google, or
I honestly thought that was kind of common knowledge.
How do you?
I didn't know it.
Because I've never heard anybody say that before.
No, I mean that's your ideal air to fuel mixture ratio.
But like, who says that that's
Einstein.
ideal?
People who
Henry
figured
Ford.
it out, engineers that I don't know when.
Henry
would
Ford
tune.
sat down with a
Henry
calculus
Ford.
calculator and figured it out.
With a what?
A calculus calculator.
A calculus
I don't know
calculator?
why. It just seems
An
insane.
abacus?
No, it was
Where they
an
slide,
abacus.
where they slide the little...
That is engineering fact. And when it comes to combustion motors, that is your optimal, most efficient air to fuel ratio. You don't believe me? I don't care.
No,
I believe
you
I'm
can
not,
look it up.
I'm not at all saying I don't believe you. I was
He's
just...
just wondering where
You're like... You're... I don't know what my point is. No, I'm not saying I don't believe you. I just have never heard anybody bring that up.
Well, I mean, I felt that it was a valid little snippet of information.
Here's
carb
my
tuning.
question. Is there a way you can like measure that? Like
That's what the oxygen sensor on a fuel injected motor is doing.
yeah, so like on that's what I was saying. There's something in my mind I was thinking of. Like on my truck, on that little gauge thing that you were making fun of me about
bad driving
unfairly.
Yeah.
One of the options that you can set the gauge to is air to
showing
fuel
air to
ratio,
fuel. Yeah, yeah.
right? And so that based on the oxygen sensor, because it knows what the fuel injector is putting out, and then it knows it can measure how much air is going through, and then you can, anyways, got it. Well, for the hell of it, I'm going to measure that on the bad driving box and see what the truck is doing.
It's a great name for it.
The bad driving box.
And that's what different tunes are doing as well. So like a more performance tune, you're
Right.
running a richer mixture because you can squeeze some more power out of that.
Right.
You're getting more burn in your mixture. So moving now on to the second thing that every combustion motor needs, is compression. You need to compress that mixture into the cylinder, the combustion chamber, which we'll get into that as well. So you need compression, and then the third thing and last thing is spark. You need something to ignite that compressed mixture.
Now, as far as compression goes, is the point? I think I've got this right, but maybe not. Is the point of compression that it's easier to basically to light the mixture when it's compressed, right? As opposed
but
to
at the same time, I mean, if you if you compress, or say you just put some, let's say for an example, put some air and some fuel atomized inside a soda can or into just a little cylinder or a little cup, and then light it. It's just going to
fuse up.
It's gonna burn.
Right.
But say if you put that under compression and
It's gonna
then
make a
you
reaction.
spark it, it's going to force.
It's going to force the piston back
so you have
down.
to compress
It's
it because
going-
you're using it to turn it into rotary motion,
Exactly.
basically.
Exactly.
But a part of it is also because it's got to burn easier if it's compressed as opposed to being at
definitely.
like
I mean, that's how a
outside
diesel
air
motor
pressure
works. Is based solely on compression.
Right.
But yeah, and as far as compression goes, pretty much a motor will, if it's got like, I forget the lowest amount. I mean, of course it will be different on different engines.
60,
but like,
70?
Oh no, definitely more than that,
I think
I'd
it's
say.
like 90.
Yeah,
It's like
something
the
around
lowest.
90.
The minimum?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had motors that have run at 65, 70.
Yeah.
Not well. But
Yeah, exactly. But
It'll
I've
run.
mentioned it before, or we've mentioned it before. A simple way to check for compression on the fly, I guess. Like I believe we brought it up when we were looking
we
to
talked
buy a
about that
motorcycle. You can pull that spark plug, kick it over, and put a lot of force with your thumb, sealing the spark plug. And when it goes through the compression stroke and it blows your thumb back, that you should have enough compression for that motor to run.
So if your thumb moves a quarter of an inch off the top, you have 60 pounds. If it moves half an inch, you have 70 pounds. And if it moves a full inch, you have 120 pounds of compression.
Yeah,
It's just
completely disregard.
It's a rule of thumb. It's just a rule of thumb.
Did you just pull that out of your ass?
Yeah, that is not
Yes.
accurate
Because
at all.
that is the dumbest thing I think I've ever heard you say.
Oh, I've said way dumber.
Yeah,
That's
true.
the stupidest
All right,
thing.
guys.
That's true.
You
We've
think
had
I've
enough
said?
fun. We've
you
had
obviously
enough fun
don't
throwing
listen
in
to me.
dumb comments and stuff
Don't
like that.
listen.
Let's get back to the informative podcast that we
So-
are trying to run here.
So should we spark? Should we start with 4-stroke motor?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we're going to start. I'll just cover this real quick, and then we can kind of tag team the different components that are in it, and then see what happens from there.
Let's do it.
So, 4-stroke. On the 4-stroke motor, the reason it is called a 4-stroke is for one cycle of the motor is there are 4 different strokes that
That it takes to complete the cycle.
that takes to complete the cycle. So one stroke would be, say, the piston is at the top of its stroke, that's top dead center, and then the stroke is from that point until it reaches the very lowest point of the stroke, where the piston is at the very lowest in the cycle. So that's one stroke, and then another stroke would be when it's at the very lowest point, and then it reaches the top again. That's another stroke. So when we're saying the stroke, that's what we mean, one or the other.
And
As
4
far
of
as
those.
It's full travel
Make-
of the piston, either
yeah.
up or down.
yeah, and those 4 strokes in the 4-stroke motor, the very first one is the intake stroke, and that one is when the piston at the top to the very bottom, and that I guess we'll go through the quick term after we explain them. So that's the intake stroke is your first one. The second stroke is your compression stroke. That's when the piston's at the bottom reaching to the top after the intake. And then the third stroke is your power stroke. This is when the spark happens at the top and then when the piston is at the very bottom. The fourth and final stroke is the exhaust stroke. When the piston's at its very bottom and then reaches the top, that is your fourth and final stroke in the cycle, and that's your exhaust stroke.
And then it repeats itself.
Yeah, and so a quick way to kind of, you may have heard these terms before, or if you do hear them, you know what they're talking about. A simple way to describe these is suck, squeeze, burn, blow. And so suck meaning sucking in that mixture intake, squeeze is your compression, and burn is your power stroke. When you ignite, and then blow is you blowing that exhaust out. So suck, squeeze, burn, blow, super easy to remember, and those are your 4 strokes on the 4-stroke motor. So we're going to go through now on the components that operate to form these different strokes. And so I'll just knock out a couple, and then you guys want to jump in, and we're just going to go real briefly. We've covered these before, most of them.
I think we've covered everything on here before. Well,
not necessarily
not
everything,
but
so we're just listing these out so you can get an idea of when we mention them what we're talking about. So carburetor, we've gone through this a lot. Its carburetor, its job is to create your mixture. It mixes the air and fuel. And then the next one we're going to be on the list, we have your heads. Heads are what house all of your valve, not all of your valve train components, but your valves and your intake and the exhaust ports. It's kind of like it has the veins in the system that allow everything to go into the cylinder to operate. And then valves, those would be, they do exactly as they say. Valves, they open and close at proper times through each stroke and when that's appropriate.
And they allow, there's intake and
you have
exhaust
intake,
valves
yeah, exactly.
to allow the mixture in and the exhaust out.
Yeah, and we're not going to get too much into it, just a quick overview.
Well, I
Because
think
we're going to be explaining more in detail of
we
what
have
their
a
jobs are.
podcast that explains in detail most of these items, so you can always look up those, to if you're not sure what one of them is.
Yeah.
So next you have the cams, and the cams are what is responsible for operating the valves, and they're timed to the motor, so they move in conjunction with the crankshaft, so they're basically keyed to wherever the piston is in
That's a
its
good
stroke.
word.
What?
Conjunction.
Yeah,
It's a good
conjunction. So they work. They are timed together to operate the valves at the correct time. Jared, handle combustion chamber.
Combustion chamber is basically where all the party mix goes into and gets ignited. So when your piston reaches top dead center and your spark plug lights, that's all happening at the top of the cylinder in the combustion chamber.
Yeah, and this is where the combustion chamber is where it's usually like a dome shape. Not all the time. There's a lot of different styles. We're not going to get into them. But your valves open in this area, and your spark plug is in this area. So it pretty much, this is like the last room where everything happens. It's where the final, when the piston's at top dead center.
It's the room above the top of the piston
compression.
At top dead center,
compression happens here.
Yeah.
Remember the party room for the carburetor?
Yeah, that's what I was
The
talking
Venturi.
about.
Yeah, so it's like
the party room
it's
for
the party room for the cylinder.
For the
It's the
cylinder.
after party.
The after party. Yeah, that's okay. That'll work.
Yeah, and then the ignition system. That is, it's pretty much the system that is responsible for creating your spark,
and at the correct time.
At the correct time.
So,
and then pistons. This is what is traveling up and down through your strokes to pretty much create the suction or blowing out, compressing. It's the moving part that. It's your usher, I guess. It ushers everyone into appropriate alleys.
No, it's the bouncer that allows you into the after party.
No, that would be more the valves.
Yeah, the valves are definitely.
All right, fine.
The valves
Then,
Those are the
bouncers.
bouncers.
the piston would be the
Piston's definitely
usher.
the DJ. Just like
the guy who like
going back and
shows
forth,
you
up and
to
down.
your seat once you're inside.
The usher.
Yeah, I guess that would be an usher. Okay.
Oh, I
So,
thought you were talking about like
anyways,
Usher, like the dude.
And the connecting rod or connecting rods. We're just gonna. I guess when we go into explain this, we're gonna be just solely talking about just one cylinder, and then you can apply this to however cylinders you have. They're all doing the same thing, just at different times.
The connecting rods are what connects the piston to the crankshaft.
Exactly.
So they are they have a bearing at each end that allows them to pivot, and it's basically what allows the piston to move in relation to where the crankshaft is at in its cycle.
Yeah, and then the crankshaft. The crankshaft is what operates or rotates as while it's connected to the connecting rods, connected to the piston. So this is giving you your up and down, your stroke motion. And then lastly is the exhaust. So your exhaust system, like your exhaust pipes. This is pretty much it directs those exhaust or burnt gases outside.
Yeah, that's the line for cabs outside the club.
Okay, that makes sense. Or the toilet when you vomit.
Yeah, and that's what directs the spent gases from the combustion chamber out, usually through a muffler, possibly a catalytic converter, or something.
That's how your motorcycle moves, is by force out of the exhaust pipe.
Yeah. Well,
that's not true.
actually, this is a little.
It's not a jet engine.
Yeah. This is a little something that I don't know how accurate it is, but it makes sense. Someone had told me a while back that exhaust pipes, like their true function is like they is for. How am I going to word this?
I have no clue what you're trying to say.
Well, its like main purpose is like changing like a harmonic frequency to expel the gases.
What do you mean by that?
Like performance pipes or headers. Those are it's a different harmonic frequency that improves the flow of
the exhaust gas.
Of the exhaust gas.
See, that's one thing that I never fully understood. Like, how does that actually affect the performance of the motor?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I don't really get that. Like, how does changing to a different exhaust or a freer flowing exhaust? Because a stock exhaust, like say you remove the muffler might be restrictive, but like the exhaust is just a pipe. Like I've never really fully understood how changing that can make such a big performance gain. Just by changing the diameter or the
I mean, it's pretty much it's like
pipe.
a free flowing exhaust. It makes sense to me because it pretty much, like, say on the highway, there's like a highway with 2 lanes will operate in congestion much slower than a highway with 4 lanes. So there will be more spaces for vehicles to travel.
Yeah. Okay.
And so with that, it's causing less force against that piston to complete that stroke and expel those gases faster.
So an exhaust that doesn't flow as freely basically makes more it's more difficult for it to expel the gases, which is kind of like, I'm going to say back pressure, but that's probably the wrong word for it, but it's more like drag on the motor, I guess.
Yeah.
And with a better exhaust that flows freely, there's not that drag on the motor there, I guess.
And same with valves, bigger valves.
Right.
Intake and exhaust, you allow more mixture to come in.
Right.
So it's a much hotter burn, not hotter, but there's more
efficient, I guess.
Not efficient.
There's more to burn.
Yeah,
more
there's
to
more
suck
to
in.
burn, so you're actually creating a larger
well, it's just more
explosion.
volume. You can move more mix. You know what would be awesome if we could get somebody from an exhaust company to talk with us.
That would be
that
great.
Would be
Yeah.
killer to have somebody explain it in detail how that works. Okay, I'll make a note.
So-
That'd be cool.
Yeah, so moving now on to now that we've explained all these components, explaining how this actually all comes together and how it works. So we're going to have it broken down into each stroke. The intake, compression, power, and exhaust stroke we talked about or mentioned earlier, we're going to go down and just kind of break through what actually happens during those strokes. Who wants to take intake stroke?
I will. So on the intake stroke, this is the first stroke in the cycle, and this is responsible for bringing the mixture into the combustion chamber. So as the intake stroke is happening,
Or just into the cylinders.
Yeah, into the cylinder.
Okay.
It
That's
fills
true.
Yeah.
So because the piston's going down and opening the cylinder. So as the piston starts at the top and as it makes its travel downwards, the intake valve opens while the piston is going down. This creates a vacuum or a suction and pulls the mixture, the air and fuel mixture from the carburetor through the head and through the open valve and into the cylinder. As the piston reaches the bottom of the stroke all the way down, the intake valve closes, and now you have your mixture setting inside of the open cylinder, so it's got the most volume available since the piston's all the way down, and that sets it up for the next stroke.
And that's
You know what I just thought of? Like, I'm not really an advocate of the weed, but I know how a gravity bong works. It's a very similar thing to that.
I guess it. Yeah, that's true. It would
A gravity bong is a 4-stroke motor for the most part.
Yeah.
Except without the bang. Well, I guess you get the bang.
Yeah, you get the bang at the end.
Yeah. So if that helps, makes any
If
sense.
you partake, that might help you
Yeah.
understand how this works.
So after the intake stroke, you have the compression stroke, and so both at when the compression stroke starts, I guess at the end of the intake stroke, the intake valve will close. Both valves will be closed, and the piston will travel from the bottom of the cylinder back up to the top, compressing all that mixture into a smaller area to have a more combustible.
Well, it compresses it.
Yeah. So it's compressing, to the head, basically.
Not to
Compressing
the head, but
to the top of the cylinder.
Yeah, and I guess we didn't really mention the combustion chamber is at the bottom of the head or heads, so the piston just traveling up.
Because when the piston's all the way up, it's basically even with the top of the cylinder. So
top of the cylinder.
So the combustion chamber is actually the domed or the concave
where
area
all
in the
of
head.
the mixture is being squeezed into.
Right.
And so as this is after the compression stroke, when the piston is at the very top of the stroke or of the cylinder, now is the power stroke. And at the top of the compression stroke, both valves, like Jared said, are both closed, and a spark happens now through the ignition system, and the spark plug ignites the compressed mixture, and then the burning gases expand, pushing the piston down to the bottom of the stroke with a lot of force. And so that's your power. That's what makes the motor go.
After that happens and the piston's all the way down and the burnt gas is filling up the cylinder, then you move on to the exhaust stroke. And so during the exhaust stroke, the piston starts to go back up as the exhaust valve opens. The piston then pushes the burnt gases out of the exhaust valve out of the cylinder through the exhaust valve and then out into the exhaust pipe. And as the piston reaches the top of its stroke, the exhaust valve closes, and then that's what sets it up to start the intake stroke again.
Yeah. So this then after the exhaust stroke is complete, it goes right back to the intake stroke. So right at picking up just right off where Evan left, when that exhaust valve closes, when the piston's at the top of its stroke, then it goes right back into the intake starts to open as that piston travels down and repeats the cycle.
Whole cycle.
On a four-stroke motor, there is the ignition every second turn of the crankshaft. To complete this cycle, the crankshaft rotates 2 times around.
Right.
And
but that it depends on the motor when the spark plug fires, because some ignition systems will fire like every will fire on the intake stroke as well. Like they're called wasted spark ignitions. So
I guess saying
totally
the spark
depends.
doesn't
But that doesn't really affect anything. Like if you have a spark during the intake stroke, it doesn't matter because you haven't fully filled it.
Well, no, it's on the
gas,
exhaust stroke when it sparks. Not on the intake. On the intake stroke, it'd be very crucial not to have a spark in there, because then you would just blow out. You'd sneeze out of the carb and just. The wasted spark happens.
It's
on the
180
exhaust
degrees apart, though, isn't it? Compression. No, maybe you're right.
Yeah,
maybe you're right.
A wasted spark always
because
will
it's
happen
only
on
doing
the
that because
exhaust.
it's firing at the same time that another cylinder
Yeah,
is
exactly.
on. So yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, it's like Harley systems, they operate on the wasted spark system, meaning that there's one coil taking care of both cylinders, and they fire each cylinder at the same time. And the reason they can do this is because while one is on the power stroke firing that mixture, the other is on his exhaust stroke. So firing that spark plug will have no effect to already the expelled gas.
Oh, so
gases.
that means that those 2 cylinders are 90 degrees apart on the crankshaft.
It's 180 degree. Oh wait.
No, it would have to be 90 because if it was 180, you would be on the intake stroke.
No, if it was 180 or if it was 90, then it would be sparking 4 times throughout the system.
Yeah.
180 it'd be firing
Twice.
And
360 would be firing once.
Okay, I have to think
makes sense.
through that. Okay, I'll take your
I
word
follow
for it.
you.
Yeah.
I got it. We were just talking about this on the KZ last night.
That pretty much goes through a 4-stroke motor. I like Jared or Evan said, we'll probably have, or we will have on the website just like a little GIF animation and even another video that we'll probably have linked to going through the same going through the same thing, but we'll have some visuals so you can kind of better understand it. Hopefully, we were able to describe what happens at least in detail for each stroke of the system. So, you guys have anything to add with 4 strokes?
No, I don't think so. That pretty much covers it.
Okay.
So we're gonna cover a 2-stroke engine, and the differences with the 2-stroke engines is they don't have valves, they don't have heads. It only fires once per revolution.
Or not only, it fires once per.
Yeah, it fires once per revolution.
Where 4 strokes fire once every 2 rotations of the crank.
There's less moving parts, and there's no oil in the case. The oil is either mixed in via mixture pre-mixed with your gas or like
oil
automatic
injection.
Like an oil injector or something like that.
And the last thing, the last difference is piston. The piston is what in turn acts as the valves.
As it's moving up and down, it's creating the vacuum through different ports, but not valve. They're not valves that are opening.
It just reveals different passages.
Yes.
So again, we're just going to go through the components of a 2-stroke motor. A lot of these are the same, just a few differences. One, carburetor, or I guess on the other are 4 strokes as well. Carburetor could be your fuel injectors and throttle body. Same thing. They're doing the same thing. Is just creating that mixture. Carburetors, your intake ports, like on heads on a 4-stroke. These intake ports are through the it's on the case and then also on the cylinder or cylinders. There's a reed valve. The reed valve is it is like how do I explain this? Pretty much with pressure, with like a vacuum, it'll open up that valve. A reed valve is connected to the carburetor and the intake port. It's I guess sandwiched in between that. So that's pretty much just I guess it's acting as it's a reed valve or a valve. So as the motor rotates, it's causing, and when it's causing a vacuum, it sucks that mixture through, and then when it's under compression, it closes those valves, so mixture can't continuously go through the system. I believe we do go through explain when the reed valve does its job, and hopefully that'll help you understand it. Ignition system, same like a 4-stroke. And the combustion chamber, same as a 4-stroke as well, but that's pretty much just your very top part of the motor. Since it's not, it's pretty much the only thing that, say, the very top on the 4-stroke are the heads, or main component of the heads. It's pretty much the same, except all it is just your combustion chamber. And it just pretty much that's where your spark plug will screw into. And then your cylinder, same as 4-strokes. It's what the wall or cylinder that the piston travels up and down in. Your exhaust port, and your exhaust, your crankshaft, connecting rod, and piston or pistons. So, those are your components very quickly gone through.
A lot of them are the same, but there's a couple that are different.
Yeah.
So basically, the mixture is air, gas, and then oil for a 2-stroke motor. And like I said earlier, the oil is either pre-mixed or is injected through an injecting system. But the oil in the mixture is what lubricates and cools the moving parts. And then, so that's where your everything's getting lubricated.
Yeah,
versus
since
in the 4-stroke motor,
there isn't oil in the case.
Yeah. So both have oil. It's just a different delivery.
Mm. Well, one sits in the sits in the case,
it,
and one
one is
one
like
is
airborne,
fed in
yeah.
with the mixture.
Let's see. So yeah, and the mixture is the mixture from the carburetor, the air, gas, and oil fills the case of the motor.
Yeah, I just learned that in detail the other day. So yeah, which is interesting. I never knew that. That's why there is holes on the bottom of the skirt of the piston on a two-stroke. So the mixture is actually pulled in. The crankcase is sealed and pressurized, and it pulls the mixture in through ports on the skirt on the bottom of the piston, basically, and the mixture travels through the crankcase and is then pulled through ports in the cylinder wall up into the combustion chamber.
Yeah, and so it's called a two-stroke because just like with the four-stroke, there's two strokes to complete one cycle.
Yeah.
So basically, as the piston travels up, it forces the burnt gases. Wait, did I skip a whole section?
Start from the other side.
Sorry, I'm sick, guys, so give me a little break. I thought that you had just gotten done saying that, but I wasn't listening.
No, I was just describing how the intake works, but I didn't describe the cycle.
So with mixture in the case and the piston at the top of the stroke, after a spark, it makes a combustion and it pushes the piston travels down, and as it's traveling down, it exposes the exhaust port so that all those burnt gases can exit the exhaust port.
Well, it releases most of the gases at that point.
Yeah, it's not as efficient, I want to say.
Yeah, I mean it's a I forget the term. It's cross direction system, I believe.
Yeah, because as that's opening, it's also opening a port on the other side of the cylinder wall that's letting
because you're basically pulling mixture in as some of the exhaust is going out.
Yeah, this has gone so confusing already. Let's try this again.
We'll post a GIF on it too because all this.
This
again,
one does
sense.
make a hell of a lot more sense when you look at a picture.
Yeah,
because it's kind of confusing
does.
because you almost want to try and
there's so many things
it to the four-stroke, but there's so much more stuff. The four-stroke you can break down into separate pieces much easier, and this one there's multiple
doing
things
it at the same
happening
time.
at each cycle, so it's harder to explain.
Well,
so,
and like we said earlier, like your piston is acting as your valves.
Yeah, and
Right.
as it's traveling through the cylinder, it's opening and closing different passages representing the intake and exhaust.
right.
Let me try to go through this since I wrote them. Since I don't think you guys are really doing it too much justice right now.
No, seeing as how I just learned exactly how they work the other day, I will let you handle this.
So, like we mentioned earlier, the major difference with the four-stroke to a two-stroke is the carburetor doesn't feed directly into the cylinders. The carburetor fills the case with the mixture. And with the case or mixture in the case and the piston at the top of the stroke right after it sparks. And like we mentioned, on every rotation of the motor, there is a spark, and so there's a power stroke. And so right after a stroke, the piston will travel downwards, exposing a exhaust port, releasing most of the gases at that point, and as it travels further down in the stroke, it pressurizes the case with the mixture in the case, and then exposes another path or port, another port in the cylinder that allows the mixture from the case to enter the cylinder. And while this is happening, it's also creating that cross flow process where the intake coming into the cylinder is also forcing that expelled gases out through the exhaust passage as well. Do you have something to add?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And
that's kind of what I was trying to say, but just more in detail.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that at that point, that is essentially one stroke. That is at the top when the piston is at the top of its stroke, and have fully traveled downwards now. And let's see now. After the mixture has entered the cylinder, as the piston travels up, it forces more burnt gases out of the passage, the passage in the cylinder that flows to the exhaust pipe. So as it forces the burnt gases out, and as that piston is continuing to travel upwards, it closes off the passage to the case, which was allowing the mixture to enter the cylinder. And then, once that passage is closed, that is creating a vacuum in the case from the piston moving upwards to allow the reed valve, what we briefly talked about earlier, to draw more mixture into the case. So it's refilling that stock of mixture inside the case. So now the piston continues to move up, blocking the exhaust port now. And at this point, this is where it is compressing that mixture that was drawn in from the case. So it's compressed the mixture now, and when the piston reaches the very top of the stroke, it's not exactly at top dead center, but it's at top of the stroke. The spark plug fires, igniting the compressed mixture, forcing the piston back down, closing the reed valve, and the reed valve continually as it traveled up was allowing more mixture into the case. So now that it's forcing down, it's causing negative pressure on that reed valve to now close and seal that path. So when as the piston travels down, it closes the reed valve, and as it reaches the very bottom again, or not necessarily, then it just starts this process over again. So as it's traveling down after the compression, after the spark or the power of it, it opens up the exhaust port or exhaust passage, allowing the burnt gases to expel out of there, and then opens up traveling a little farther down, but exposes the passage from the case to the cylinder to allow more mixture into the cylinder, and thus repeating the cycle once again. So that was explained very quickly, and a lot of processes going on, and this happens all within 2 strokes, and it fires every single time, every single rotation of the motor. And so pretty much one complete stroke or one complete cycle or full rotation of the crank. Same on the 4-stroke is just up and then back, or up, down, and then down, or and then up again. So
top to bottom to top.
Yeah, and so that's one stroke.
So these fire
that's 2 strokes and one full rotation of the crankshaft.
These fire the plug basically when the piston's up and down?
No.
Only when it's at the top.
Only when it reaches the top of the
got it.
Of the cylinder. So, like I said, we'll have a GIF animation or something, possibly even another link to a video showing this cycle.
Yeah, definitely.
and definitely even knowing how it works, it's difficult to visualize it myself. So having that visual reference will definitely be very knowledgeable as well to kind of link all this.
It'll
information
definitely
to
help
it.
Consolidate.
That's really the only way you're totally going to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, even get a decent understanding of it is to watch a video of it over and over again for 10 minutes and see every single cycle. Just you'll get it in your head pretty quickly from doing it. But I never really realized how little I knew about how a two-stroke works
Yeah.
until looking at this.
Well, yeah, I didn't really understand it until we decided we were going to talk about this topic.
Yeah.
But
so,
I guess, well, some of the benefits of a two-stroke, why say, or kind of, I guess, not necessarily just the differences, but like say, the benefits of a two-stroke is, since it is firing on every rotation of the motor, you're essentially getting double, not double the power, but for what it takes a four-stroke to do in 2 rotations of the crank, it's able to do it in 1 turn of the crank. So, so that power stroke happens twice compared to the one
four-stroke.
time
Right.
it takes to complete the cycle. So, with that, like, there is a definite power advantage. Usually, like, kind of safe to say, like a rough. Usually, like, say there's a 250 two-stroke motor and a 500cc four-stroke. Usually, like, an accurate or somewhat ballpark is a two-stroke has about roughly double the amount a four-stroke would have of the same cc. I just made it.
well,
difficult
like
to
for
explain it
instance,
that
like
way.
the racing classes, like for motocross, they would race like when four-stroke dirt bikes started getting popular, they would race 125 two-strokes with the 250 four-stroke classes.
Yeah.
and then same with
And
the
they're,
250
like,
two-strokes with the 450
yeah,
four-stroke
that's
classes.
your like roughly equivalent.
And they're obviously
as far
not
as power.
equal, and the motors result in totally different power bands and different pluses and minuses for how you want to ride, but in overall power they're fairly equal.
Yeah, and another benefit of two-stroke is that there's really only 3 moving parts.
Right.
There's your piston that's moving through the cylinder wall, and then your connecting rod and your crankshaft, and those are your 3 moving parts. So it's very, very simple.
No valves to adjust.
Yeah, no valves, no nothing. Very simple system. Some of the downsides. And they're also very light.
Yeah.
Extremely light because they're so simple. It's not carrying all that
Extra oil.
Right.
So you don't have that added weight.
And also,
You end up, since these things lubricate themselves with oil in your fuel, you end up burning oil, and I think that's one of the downsides is how much crap you end up getting, on the pipes. You'll never get away completely from, burnt oil, basically, which kind of makes a mess on the exhaust pipe.
yeah, who gives a shit about dirty exhaust pipe?
It gets annoying with, like, on every two-stroke dirt bike I've ever had, probably 5 or 6 of them, they all, like, by the end of a day of riding, your swing arm and your plastics and the fender and the frame is covered in a black, like, just this gross, like, black, oily, burnt crap that gets everywhere, and it's really hard to get off of stuff.
I don't necessarily think. I mean, it's blowing it out of the back of the bike.
But they no matter what, even with new seals, they will always leak eventually at the spot where the muffler connects to the pipe on everyone. And
well,
it's just,
we're assuming this is a well-maintained and properly
even
sealed
well-maintained
motor.
ones, it'll happen. You'll get the black burnt oil all over the back of the pipe. It happens.
Yeah, I don't know. I
It's a
don't agree
legitimate-
with my experience.
It's a legitimate downside to two-stroke motor.
That's your experience. I have a different one, so I don't. I can't argue with you.
What two-stroke bike did you put a lot of time on?
The Suzuki GT350. I've done a lot of time on that.
And that
dirt
thing-
bikes, but you end up dirty anyways on dirt bikes.
I'm not saying it's a reason not to use it, but it's a legitimate downside. I will say that bikes that had an oil injection system don't seem to be as bad as ones that you pre-mix yourself, because you usually end up mixing it richer than you should have, and then you end up burning a lot more oil. So I think the ones that have an auto injector probably run leaner if they're set the way they were meant to be, and then it's probably not as much of an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that covers 4-stroke and 2-stroke motors.
Yeah, I guess that about covers it.
We got any emails?
And as far
No.
as like 2-stroke, I base it off the most simple system. Like as it advanced, like there's more like scavenging systems and stuff like that to properly expel the gases and keep the intake mixture inside the cylinder. Because essentially they're both open at the same time, and that intake or mixture could easily go through the exhaust passage,
Right.
and so you have unburnt mixture flowing through the exhaust.
There's also a lot of 2-strokes. Well, at least dirt bikes, anyways, have power valves that like open the little port in the exhaust. At a certain point, and it's also based on throttle position, and I don't even really understand all the details of that, but there's a lot more stuff that they've done to them to make them really to get a ton more power out of a small motor.
Definitely. And they're doing like direct injection too now, which is essentially fuel injection,
right?
Which is extremely efficient.
They're pretty cool. I really wish that there was more 2-stroke bikes around.
I think
still,
because pretty much like I don't think any manufacturer really offers like 2-strokes.
I'm pretty sure they
at least
cut
in
out
America
the motocross 2-strokes. I don't think anybody makes them anymore. I think like 2013, I think was the last year Yamaha made the YZ250. I think pretty sure they stopped. Like they're done. I don't think anybody makes them anymore.
I really do hope like as some more technology advances that they'll be able to essentially like it came down to
it was all emissions. I
emissions
think is what
like
killed it
cutting
off.
them out.
Yeah,
but hopefully they'll be able to kind of make some breakthroughs that
it would be
to.
cool because there's nothing else that compares to the ring of like a 2-stroke exhaust. It's just a cool sound.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's pretty lame that you don't get to hear that anymore.
But well, do we have any questions?
Wait, let me look real quick. I don't think we really have. Yeah, actually, no, we don't. We don't have any emails we need to read. So,
all right.
I think that pretty much covers it. But again, if you have any questions or comments or anything, hit us up at motorbikemondays.com or email us at contact@motorbikemondays.com. Yeah, let us know what you want to hear, any questions or anything, and you can stream and download the show from there. And as always, check out racetecelectric.com if you have any electrical needs, or buy a motorcycle from these guys.
SeaweedandGravel.com.
So we'll be back next week, and talk to you soon.
Later.